Hey everyone, Catlin Moore here, and I need you to understand something that should shake every American watching this video right now. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning to discover that the company that built your city, that employed your grandparents, your parents, and defined your entire region's identity for over a century. Imagine discovering that this company has decided you no longer matter, that your state is no longer worth their investment, that they're taking everything and leaving. This isn't a hypothetical scenario. This is happening right now in Seattle, Washington. Boeing, the legendary aerospace giant that literally put Seattle on the map, that transformed a logging town into a global center of aviation technology, that employed generations of American workers building the planes that won wars and connected the world. Boeing is abandoning the Pacific Northwest, and they're taking 100,000 jobs with them. But here's what makes this story so much more devastating than just one company relocating. This represents the collapse of the American aerospace industry as we know it, the destruction of union manufacturing jobs that built the middle class, and a warning sign for every state that thinks loyalty and history mean anything to corporations in the modern economy. So make sure you hit that subscribe button for Catlin Moore, because what I'm about to reveal affects every American worker, every community that depends on major employers, and the future of American manufacturing itself. Let's get into it. To understand the magnitude of what's happening, you need to understand what Boeing means to the Pacific Northwest. This isn't just another company. This is the company that built Seattle into what it became. Boeing's story in Seattle begins in 1916. William Boeing, a timber baron looking for his next venture, founded Pacific Aero Products Company in a boathouse on Lake Union. Within a year, it became Boeing Airplane Company. For the next century, Boeing and Seattle grew together, inseparable, each making the other what it was. During World War II, Boeing's Seattle facilities built 17,000 B-17 flying fortresses, the planes that helped win the war in Europe. After the war, Boeing pioneered commercial aviation with the 707, the plane that made jet travel accessible to millions. The 747 jumbo jet, designed and built in Everett, Washington, revolutionized long-distance travel and remained in production for over 50 years. At Boeing's peak employment in Washington state, the company directly employed over 100,000 workers. But that number doesn't capture the real impact. For every Boeing employee, economists estimate another 4 to 6 jobs existed in the supply chain. Machine shops, parts suppliers, engineering firms, transportation, food services, everything that supported the massive aerospace ecosystem. The Everett factory, where they build the 747, 777, and 787 Dreamliner, is the largest building by volume in the world. It's so massive that clouds can form inside on humid days. Walking through that facility felt like witnessing American industrial might at its peak, mile after mile of assembly lines, thousands of skilled workers, planes taking shape from raw materials to finished aircraft ready to fly anywhere in the world. But that era is ending, and the speed at which Boeing is dismantling its Washington presence should terrify anyone who thinks company loyalty means anything anymore. In 2001, Boeing shocked Seattle by moving its corporate headquarters to Chicago. They claimed it was about being centrally located, about separating corporate decision-making from manufacturing. But it was the first sign that Seattle's importance to Boeing was declining. Then came the accelerated shift of actual production. The 787 Dreamliner, despite being designed in Washington, saw major components manufactured in South Carolina, Japan, Italy, anywhere but the state that built Boeing's reputation. When Boeing opened a second 787 assembly line in Charleston, South Carolina in 2009, they promised it would complement, not replace, Washington production. That was a lie. Today, the truth is undeniable. Boeing is systematically moving production, engineering, and high-paying jobs out of Washington state. South Carolina's non-union facilities are expanding while Washington plants are shrinking. Engineering positions are being relocated to other states. New programs are being assigned to facilities outside Washington. The numbers tell a devastating story. Boeing's Washington workforce has declined from over 100,000 at its peak to approximately 70,000 today. That's 30,000 direct jobs lost. But remember the multiplier effect. Those 30,000 direct jobs represent potentially 150,000 to 180,000 total jobs lost when you count suppliers, services, and all the economic activity they supported. And this exodus is accelerating, not slowing down. Let me tell you about people whose lives have been shattered by Boeing's decisions. Because statistics don't capture the human devastation of a company abandoning a community that gave it everything. Meet John. He's a third-generation Boeing machinist. His grandfather built B-17s during World War II. His father worked on the 747 program for 35 years. John started at Boeing right out of high school in 1995, following family tradition. He learned precision machining, worked his way up through the union ranks, became an expert on wing assembly. He bought a house in Mukilteo, raised 2 kids, coached Little League, built a life around the stability of Boeing employment. In 2019, John got his notice. His position was being eliminated. The work wasn't going away. It was being transferred to South Carolina. He was 52 years old. Boeing offered him 2 choices: relocate to Charleston and lose his union protection, or take a severance package and find something else after 24 years of dedicated service. John chose the severance. He couldn't uproot his family, leave his aging parents, abandon the only community he'd ever known. But finding comparable work at his age proved impossible. The specialized aerospace skills that made him valuable at Boeing meant nothing to employers outside that industry. He ended up taking a job at a local machine shop for 40% less pay, no pension, minimal benefits. His American dream, the promise that loyalty and hard work would provide middle-class security, was destroyed by a company that decided South Carolina's lower wages and anti-union environment were more important than the workers who built Boeing's success. Or consider Sarah, an aerospace engineer who graduated from the University of Washington with top honors. She dreamed of designing planes at Boeing, following in the footsteps of legendary engineers who created commercial aviation as we know it. She landed a position in 2015 working on next-generation aircraft systems. The job paid well, but more importantly, it meant something. She was advancing human flight, continuing Boeing's legacy of innovation. Then, in 2023, Sarah's entire engineering group got notice that their functions were being consolidated in Boeing's Texas facilities. The company offered relocation, but Sarah's husband had a medical practice in Seattle. Her parents lived nearby. Her kids were in good schools. Moving wasn't realistic. She left Boeing and now works for a tech company doing work that pays comparably but lacks the meaning she found in aerospace. Another brilliant engineer lost to Boeing's short-term financial calculations. These aren't isolated stories. Thousands of Boeing workers are facing similar impossible choices: uproot your entire life or abandon your career. Families are being torn apart. Communities are losing their economic foundations. The American aerospace expertise that won wars and dominated global aviation is being scattered and diluted. So how did we get here? How did Boeing decide that the state that built the company was no longer worth their commitment? The answer is a toxic combination of labor costs, tax policy, and corporate short-termism that reveals everything wrong with American capitalism today. Start with labor costs and union relations. Boeing workers in Washington state are represented by the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, one of the strongest industrial unions remaining in America. These workers negotiated good contracts over decades: solid wages, comprehensive health care, defined benefit pensions, strong workplace protections. At its peak, a senior Boeing machinist could earn $80,000 to $90,000 annually with benefits that provided genuine middle-class security. But to modern Boeing executives obsessed with quarterly earnings and stock prices, those worker protections represent unacceptable costs. They look at South Carolina, a right-to-work state where union organizing is nearly impossible, where workers accept lower wages and fewer benefits out of desperation, and they see an opportunity to slash labor costs. The wage differential is stark. A machinist in Washington might earn $35 to $40 per hour. The same position in Charleston pays $25 to $30 per hour. Multiply that across thousands of workers, and Boeing sees hundreds of millions in annual savings. Never mind that the Washington workers are more experienced, more skilled, more productive. Never mind the quality issues that have plagued South Carolina production. The spreadsheet says South Carolina is cheaper, and that's all that matters to executives who will collect multi-million-dollar bonuses for cutting costs. Tax policy played a crucial role in Boeing's calculation. Washington State, desperate to keep Boeing, offered an $8.7 billion tax break package in 2013, the largest state subsidy to a single company in American history. Boeing took the money, made promises about keeping production in Washington, and then proceeded to shift work to other states anyway. Meanwhile, South Carolina offered its own massive incentive package to lure Boeing: free land, tax, abatements, infrastructure improvements, worker training programs, all funded by taxpayers. Other states entered bidding wars, each trying to offer Boeing better deals than Washington could match. Boeing played states against each other in a race to the bottom, extracting maximum subsidies while maintaining the freedom to leave whenever something better came along. The 737 MAX disasters of 2018-2019 accelerated Boeing's problems and its divergence from Washington. 2 crashes killing 346 people revealed deep organizational dysfunction, a company that had lost its engineering-focused culture in favor of financial engineering. Investigations showed that Boeing had prioritized speed and cost-cutting over safety, outsourcing critical systems to the lowest bidder, pressuring regulators, and creating a culture where accountants overruled engineers. The MAX crisis cost Boeing tens of billions in direct costs, destroyed its reputation, and led to criminal charges. But instead of returning to its engineering roots in Washington, where institutional expertise still existed, Boeing doubled down on the cost-cutting approach that caused the disaster. More work shifted to lower-cost facilities. More experienced Washington engineers were replaced with cheaper labor elsewhere. Leadership changes compounded the problem. When Boeing moved headquarters to Chicago in 2001, it physically separated corporate decision-makers from the factories and engineers who actually built planes. CEOs stopped walking the factory floors in Everett, stopped talking directly to machinists and engineers, stopped understanding the manufacturing process intimately. Boeing transformed from an engineering company that made profits into a financial company that happened to make planes. This cultural shift had devastating consequences. Decisions that would have been obviously wrong to anyone who understood aircraft manufacturing were made by executives focused solely on stock prices and quarterly earnings. The connection between Boeing leadership and the Washington workforce that built the company's success was completely severed. State and local government in Washington has watched Boeing's exodus with a mixture of denial, desperation, and ultimate helplessness. Despite the billions in tax breaks and the decades of public investment in infrastructure supporting Boeing, state officials have proven utterly unable to keep the company from leaving. The pattern has been consistent. Boeing threatens to move work unless it gets more tax breaks or regulatory relief. State officials, terrified of job losses, provide whatever Boeing demands. Boeing takes the subsidies and moves work anyway. State officials express surprise and disappointment, but do nothing meaningful to hold Boeing accountable. Municipal leaders in cities like Everett and Renton, whose economies depend heavily on Boeing, have been even more desperate. They've offered additional local tax breaks, expedited permitting, infrastructure improvements, anything to keep Boeing facilities operating. But they're negotiating from a position of complete weakness. Boeing knows these communities will be devastated if production leaves, and the company ruthlessly exploits that desperation. Federal government response has been equally inadequate. Boeing receives billions in defense contracts, NASA contracts, and various federal subsidies. Theoretically, the federal government could use this leverage to require Boeing to maintain American manufacturing jobs. In practice, Boeing's lobbying power in Washington, D.C. ensures that no such conditions are ever seriously imposed. The union representing Boeing, Workers, has fought to keep jobs in Washington, negotiating contract after contract, trying to balance workers' needs with the company's demands for cost savings. But they're fighting a losing battle against global economic forces and corporate power that vastly exceeds labor's remaining leverage. Strikes and work stoppages have occasionally delayed Boeing's plans, but never fundamentally altered the company's trajectory away from Washington. What's happening with Boeing in Washington isn't unique. It's part of a broader pattern of industrial decline and corporate betrayal playing out across America. But examining how other states have handled similar situations reveals both the systemic nature of the problem and the lack of effective solutions. Michigan experienced decades of automotive industry decline as companies moved production to lower-wage states and countries. Despite massive subsidies and concessions to auto companies, Detroit lost hundreds of thousands of manufacturing jobs. The city went bankrupt. Workers saw their pensions cut, their communities destroyed. The lesson: once companies decide to leave, nothing state governments can realistically offer will keep them if financial calculations favor departure. South Carolina and other southern states competed aggressively for northern manufacturing jobs by offering rock-bottom wages, anti-union environments, and massive tax subsidies. They won these competitions in the short term, attracting companies like Boeing. But the jobs they created pay far less than the jobs that were lost. Workers in these states have less security, fewer benefits, and no union protection. The race to the bottom doesn't create prosperity. It just shifts poverty from one region to another while corporations capture all the gains. Texas attracted Toyota, Oracle, Tesla, and other major companies with no state income tax and business-friendly regulations. But Texas achieved this partly by underinvesting in public services, infrastructure, and social safety nets. The low-tax, low-service model creates its own problems, as the 2021 power grid failure demonstrated when hundreds died because privatized infrastructure was poorly maintained. Internationally, Airbus in Europe provides a stark contrast to Boeing. European governments treat aerospace manufacturing as a strategic national interest, not just another industry. They provide patient capital, support advanced manufacturing, protect key expertise, and maintain long-term commitments. The result has been Airbus overtaking Boeing in commercial aviation despite starting decades behind. America's approach, treating Boeing as just another profit-maximizing corporation, has resulted in declining competitiveness and loss of industrial leadership. The future for Washington State's aerospace industry looks genuinely bleak without fundamental changes that show no sign of happening. Boeing's current trajectory suggests continued decline of Washington employment. New aircraft programs will be assigned to other states. Existing Washington production will gradually shift elsewhere as contracts expire and facilities age. Engineering work will increasingly move to lower-cost locations. Within a decade, Boeing's Washington presence could shrink to a fraction of its current size. The supply chain that supported Boeing is already collapsing. Small machine shops that depended on Boeing contracts are closing. Engineering firms are laying off staff. Parts suppliers are moving to be closer to Boeing's new facilities in other states. The entire aerospace ecosystem that took a century to build in Washington is being dismantled in a matter of years. Skilled workers are facing impossible choices. Older workers are taking early retirement, accepting buyouts, or finding work in other industries at reduced pay. Mid-career workers are deciding whether to uproot families to follow Boeing to other states or abandon aerospace careers entirely. Young workers are choosing different career paths, looking at Boeing's trajectory and deciding aerospace offers no future in Washington. The regional economic impact will be catastrophic. Washington State's economy has already felt the pain of losing 30,000 direct Boeing jobs. If that number doubles to 60 or 70,000 lost jobs, a realistic possibility, the effect on the broader economy will be devastating. tax revenues will collapse, requiring service cuts. Property values in Boeing-dependent communities will crash. Retail, restaurants, and services will fail as customers disappear. The downward spiral feeds on itself. Some hope exists in aerospace startups and smaller companies attempting to fill the void. Boeing is leaving. Companies developing electric aircraft, space technology, advanced drones, and other next-generation aerospace technologies have established operations in Washington, attracted by the available workforce and existing expertise. But these companies employ hundreds of workers, not hundreds of thousands. They can't replace what Boeing meant to the regional economy. So here's what I need from you. First, drop a comment below and tell me your Boeing story. Did you or your family work at Boeing? Have you been affected by the company's decisions? Are you in an industry that supports aerospace? I want to hear from real people dealing with the consequences of corporate decisions made in distant boardrooms by executives who never walk a factory floor. Second, if this video opened your eyes to what's happening to American manufacturing and the workers who built industries like aerospace, hit that like button and share this with everyone you know. This isn't just about Seattle or Washington State. This is about the future of industrial jobs in America. About whether loyalty means anything. About whether companies have any responsibility to the communities and workers that made their success possible. Third, make sure you're subscribed to Caitlin Moore and hit that notification bell, because I'm going to keep investigating this story. I'll be covering what happens to Boeing workers, examining other industries following the same path, and holding leadership accountable when they fail to protect American jobs. The Boeing exodus from Seattle represents more than just one company's decision. It represents the failure of American economic policy to protect workers and communities from corporate short-termism. It represents the destruction of the manufacturing jobs that built the middle class. And it represents a warning that no state, no workforce, no community is safe from abandonment when corporations decide their loyalty lies only with shareholders and quarterly earnings. This is Caitlin Moore. Thank you for watching. Remember that the workers who built America's aerospace industry deserve better than to be discarded when companies decide they're too expensive. Stay informed, demand accountability, and I'll see you in the next investigation.